If you walked through the heavy wooden doors of a British secondary school in the early 1960s, you did not enter a place designed around comfort, emotional development, or personal exploration. You entered a building that smelled faintly of chalk dust, machine oil, floor polish, damp wool coats, and ink. The corridors echoed. Shoes scraped against stone floors. Classroom doors closed with a firmness that suggested seriousness rather than warmth. School was not presented as a journey of self-discovery. It was presented as preparation. Preparation for work. Preparation for responsibility. Preparation for adulthood. And for boys in many British schools during that era, whether in single-sex grammar schools, technical schools, secondary moderns, or mixed comprehensives, the subjects they were directed toward reflected very clear expectations about the kind of men they were assumed to become. Some of those subjects still exist in fragments today. Many do not, and even where they survive, they rarely carry the same tone, the same intensity, or the same underlying message. Let's step back into those classrooms. Woodwork with real tools. By the age of 11 or 12, many British boys found themselves standing inside a woodwork room that felt less like a school facility and more like a small professional workshop. Long wooden benches ran in rows, their surfaces carved with the initials of boys who had stood in the same spot decades before. The walls were lined with proper tools, saws of different lengths and teeth, chisels sharpened to real edges, mallets worn smooth by use, planes heavy enough to feel serious in your hand, clamps tightened with weight and purpose. These were not plastic replicas. They were not child-proof versions. They were the real thing. The air smelled of fresh timber, varnish, and oil, sawdust collected on the floor. Offcuts of pine and oak lay stacked in corners. The teacher did not begin with a long speech about risk assessment. He showed you how to measure carefully. He demonstrated how to hold the saw so it tracked straight. He explained how to keep your fingers clear of the blade, and then you were expected to work. If you cut unevenly, the timber was discarded and you began again. If your joints did not fit cleanly, you were reminded to measure twice next time. If you got a splinter, it was removed quietly and you carried on. For many boys, this was the first time school felt physically consequential. A mistake was not something marked in red pen days later. A mistake was immediate, tangible, sometimes uncomfortable. And that was precisely the point. In large parts of Britain, especially industrial towns and working-class regions, it was understood that some boys would leave school at 15 or 16 and enter apprenticeships in carpentry, joinery, construction, or factory trades. Woodwork was not an enrichment activity, it was preparation. Today, while some schools still offer design and technology classes, very few hand a 12-year-old a sharpened chisel without layers of protective oversight and paperwork. In the 1960s, the lesson was simpler. Respect the tool. Concentrate. Take responsibility. Metalwork and industrial training. If woodwork introduced you to craft, metalwork introduced you to industry. The metalwork room felt colder, louder, less forgiving. Heavy vices were bolted permanently to benches. Sheets of steel leaned against walls. Files rasped against iron with a sound that seemed sharper than any noise in a normal classroom. The air carried the scent of oil and filings. In some schools, especially technical schools and boys' grammar schools, small lathes stood under fluorescent lighting. Drilling machines hummed steadily when in use. Boys of 12 and 13 were taught to measure tolerances precisely, to file edges smooth without rounding them unintentionally, to drill straight and true. If the hole was misaligned, the piece could be ruined. There was no language about creative interpretation. The objective was accuracy. In industrial areas, Birmingham, Sheffield, Manchester, Newcastle, the connection between school and factory floor was rarely hidden. Teachers understood that many pupils would enter mechanical trades. The classroom reflected that future. Mistakes were corrected firmly, but practically. You learned that metal does not forgive inattention. Today, industrial training of this intensity usually occurs much later in specialist vocational settings. In the 1960s, it was embedded early in education, not because boys were seen as delicate, but because they were seen as future workers. Technical drawing with absolute precision. Not every lesson required noise. Technical drawing demanded silence. Large angle drawing boards stood at desks. Boys used rulers, compasses, protractors, set squares, and sharply honed pencils. Lines had to be exact, angles measured precisely, dimensions recorded clearly. You might be asked to draft the components of a mechanical joint, the outline of a simple machine, the section of a building. There was no room for flourish. A line was either straight or it was not. An angle was either correct or it was wrong. Pages had to remain clean. Erasing was done carefully so the sheet did not look untidy. Precision was not optional, it was assumed. Before computer-aided design existed, drafting was a manual discipline. Engineers, architects, surveyors, and machinists relied on clear hand-drawn plans. Schools treated this skill seriously. For many boys, technical drawing was a gateway subject, quietly directing them toward engineering and technical professions. Today, drafting is often digital. Students learn software before mastering manual technique. In 1960s Britain, the hand was trained first. And the message was clear: detail matters. Practical arithmetic for working life. Mathematics in the 1960s often felt directly connected to adult survival. Lessons frequently included calculating wages, dividing income into rent and food, measuring timber lengths, estimating material costs, working out change quickly and accurately. There were no calculators. Mental arithmetic was drilled repeatedly. Times tables were memorized. Long division was performed carefully by hand. Accuracy was not simply academic. Teachers made it clear that in real life, miscalculations cost money. In working-class communities especially, budgeting was not theoretical. It was lived reality. Boys were expected to understand how to calculate wages, overtime, and household expenses. The blackboard would fill with numbers. Pupils copied them into exercise books with neat columns. Speed mattered, accuracy mattered, clarity mattered. Today, abstract mathematics often dominates the curriculum, and calculators are widely used from an early age. In 1960s classrooms, arithmetic was presented as a life tool, because for many boys, life would begin quickly. Religious instruction and moral routine. In many British schools of the era, the day began with assembly. Hymns echoed through tall halls. A piano accompanied steady singing. A headmaster or teacher read a passage from scripture. There might be a short moral reflection. Religious education was not optional in the way it sometimes is today. Even in schools that were not strictly denominational, Christian instruction formed part of the structure of the week. Boys memorized prayers, learned biblical stories, discussed moral lessons in straightforward terms. It was not presented as abstract theology. It was presented as moral formation. respect, duty, honesty, responsibility. These values were reinforced not only in religious lessons, but in everyday classroom expectations. Modern British schools are more secular and diverse. In the early 1960s, faith and education were closely intertwined, and boys absorbed that rhythm without question. Physical drill and discipline. Physical education in many boys' schools resembled structured training rather than casual recreation. Lines formed quickly, arms raised in synchrony, movements repeated until uniform. Gymnasiums smelled of varnished floors and rope. Climbing frames stretched high. Vaulting horses stood solid and intimidating. You were expected to attempt the exercise, to complete the routine, to push through discomfort without complaint. There was less discussion of preference and more emphasis on resilience. Post-war Britain still carried the memory of national service and military discipline. Physical strength and coordination were considered virtues. Some schools even maintained cadet corps or drill elements. Today, PE often emphasizes enjoyment, teamwork, and fitness awareness. In the 1960s, it often emphasized endurance. Typing and office preparation. While typing classes were more commonly associated with girls' clerical training, in some technical and commercial schools, boys were also introduced to manual typewriters. Rows of heavy machines sat on desks. Keys required pressure. The clatter of metal arms striking ribbon created a constant mechanical rhythm. You were taught posture, finger placement, speed, and accuracy. Mistakes were not erased with a tap. They required correction fluid or starting again. Formal letter writing was also practiced. Business correspondence, job applications, structured formatting. For boys heading into clerical or administrative roles, this was practical preparation. In an age before word processors, typing was a skill that opened doors, and it was treated seriously. Basic mechanical and automotive theory. In some technical schools and secondary moderns, boys were introduced to rudimentary mechanical theory. Engines were diagrammed. Basic principles of combustion explained, components identified and labeled. Some schools had small engine blocks or demonstration equipment. Boys learned how pistons moved, how gears meshed, how machines functioned. This was not hobbyist tinkering, it was vocational orientation. In towns built around manufacturing, shipbuilding, mining, or automotive production, these lessons aligned directly with local employment. Today, mechanical training is typically postponed until specialized college courses. In the 1960s, exposure began earlier, because many boys would soon be working with machines. Strict handwriting and formal presentation. Handwriting was treated as a reflection of discipline. Exercise books were expected to be neat, margins drawn carefully, dates underlined, titles centered. Sloppy writing was corrected. Teachers believed that controlled handwriting reflected controlled thinking. Formal composition was also emphasized. Essays followed structure. Grammar was corrected firmly. Today, with digital typing dominating communication, handwriting is less central. In the 1960s, it was taken seriously because written clarity mattered in employment, correspondence, and record keeping. Early streaming and career direction. Perhaps the most defining difference between then and now was how early boys were steered toward particular futures. By 14 or 15, many had already been directed toward academic pathways, apprenticeships, or immediate employment. The tripartite system, grammar schools, technical schools, secondary moderns, often separated pupils by exam performance at 11. That decision shaped subject exposure. For some boys, advanced mathematics and sciences led toward university. For others, practical subjects prepared them for trades. The idea of endless open possibility was less prominent. The curriculum reflected expectation, and boys were rarely asked what they felt like doing. They were guided toward what they were considered suited for. Preparation for responsibility, not self-expression. What united all these subjects was tone. School was not primarily about exploring identity. It was about building competence. You learned to measure, cut, calculate, file, draft, type, write, stand straight, speak clearly, follow instruction, and accept correction. There was little therapeutic language, little emotional cushioning, and yet, for many who lived it, there was also clarity. They left school knowing how to perform practical tasks, knowing how to write a formal letter, knowing how to calculate wages, knowing how to handle tools safely, knowing how to stand in front of others and read aloud without hesitation. Modern education values creativity, flexibility, and emotional intelligence. 1960s. Education for boys valued readiness, reliability, and discipline. Neither model is purely right or wrong. They reflect different eras. But what cannot be denied is that the subjects British boys encountered in classrooms during the 1960s often looked and felt very different from those of today. And the question remains: did those lessons restrict opportunity? Or did they prepare young men for the world that awaited them? Perhaps the answer depends on who you ask. But one thing is certain. If you were a boy in a British classroom in the early 1960s, school did not feel like an extension of childhood. It felt like the first step into adulthood. And that alone tells us how much education and expectations have changed.